Hey all, this is a very special episode for me. I have my good friends, Mr. Chris Butterworth and Mr. Stephen Dargan, coming on the show to talk about a new book that we've all written called Leading Excellence. Just to give you a bit of backstory, we wrote this book to really highlight the part that leadership play in truly creating a culture of continuous improvement and innovation. And it's drawn on our knowledge and expertise over nearly 100 years combined. And we're really looking forward to bringing it to you. The book, you can actually go to the website leadingexcellencebook.com, and there's a lot of content there. There's also some free downloads that you can get on maturity index, some initial case studies. You can also go and purchase the book there through some really good avenues that get you the best price for the book at the same time. So without further ado, let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we aim to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve and create enduring, high-performance, low-impact enterprises. Learn how to enhance morale, customer and purpose centricity, focus and calmness. Learn how to create and sustain a culture of excellence at all levels of your organisation.
Welcome to episode 179 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Mr. Chris Butterworth and Stephen Dargan on the show with us today to talk about the new book that, yes, I've been involved with also, called Leading Excellence, The 5 Hats of the Adaptive Leader. This book brings together a mountain of knowledge and experience to create an approach to achieving sustainable excellence within an organisation. Chris and Stephen have found throughout their careers that leadership attitude and behaviour is the key to creating an engaged, innovating and continuously improving organisation at all levels. I'm so looking forward to exploring this new book with Chris and Dargs, as he's better known. So let's get into the episode. Guys, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brad. It's a real pleasure to be here.
And thank you, Brad. Yeah, it's really exciting to be here. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it, guys. So I'll start with Chris. Chris, why did you write this book on leadership? You know, when so much of the background is continuous improvement and lean and elements like that.
It's a really good question. There are thousands of books around about leadership, and there's a lot of books about continuous improvement as well. But we realized, the three of us together, and this is a very collaborative effort. This book, we've realized that no matter how good your continuous improvement system is, and no matter what focus that you put on it, it is essential that the leadership understand their role. And it's a very different role for leaders to create and support a culture of continuous improvement than what we traditionally might have thought of as a leader role. And there are fewer books that talk about the two things together. You know, they're two sides of the same coin. You actually have to have leaders who understand how to really focus on a culture of continuous improvement. And that's what we tried to do with this book. We thought, how can we make it easy to help leaders to understand what they need to do in terms of key behaviors and create new habits to embed those behaviors. So that was the reason for writing the book in the way we have.
Oh, thanks, Chris. And Dargs, for yourself, coming into, putting the time and effort I know goes into writing a book like this. Like, why did you get involved in this project and really see the importance of writing this book on leadership?
I think for me, Brad, it's, I've been talking to Chris since 2013 about doing something, writing a book around continuous improvement. But as Chris said, it doesn't really happen. None of it happens without the profound impact that the leaders will have on their people. So, leadership is difficult. It's a challenge. But as a leader, you have the ultimate ability to impact the lives of not just one or two people, but hundreds of people. So if not thousands. So if you can actually give the skills and tools to leaders to really truly drive the right mindset and behaviors, you'll build a really sustainable, high performing culture of continuous improvement. But yeah, it's something that I've always been passionate about. I've always been passionate about one of my own personal purposes, seeing the true potential in every single individual. So I like to see that kind of purpose starts to emulate across other leaders. And, you know, we decided to write this book. This isn't a lean, you know, purist book. We wanted a book that, you know, for every single leader, whether that be a junior leader or aspiring leader, or an existing leader that's, you know, currently got, you know, a years of experience. There's tips and tools throughout the book to make, help themselves be better tomorrow than they are today for their people, their organization and their customers.
Yeah, thanks, Dargs. I know, guys, like myself, in the community we run and other things, the amount of times I hear business improvement managers, you know, frustrated or upset with leadership behaviors that are impacting the journey, and it just seems so relevant with what you've mentioned there. You know, it plays such a pivotal part.
Yeah.
Now,
Look, Brad, but you know, when I've always maintained that when you go into an organization and you see a team of business improvement people, that to me, it personally is might be a little red flag, because you're not driving a continuous improvement culture. You're seen as that team or business improvement team are seen as the doers, and more often than not, the changes that they develop and roll out never get embedded because it's not driven from the ground upwards.
yeah, too true. Chris, in the book, I know that you mentioned about employee engagement being so critical and getting every heart and mind engaged and improving and moving forward. But the studies in recent times have showed that only 23% of employees worldwide are engaged at work. I think that's a recent Gallup survey. What do you see as the key contributors to this low level of employee engagement at work currently in our world?
It's a very complicated subject in terms of lots and lots of different factors that are involved. But one of the biggest is the way that people feel they are connected to the organization, and then the way that they are treated by their leaders or engaged with by their leaders. So, I mean, there's lots of statistics around this. You know, there's a huge global survey done a couple of years ago, which was saying that over 60% of people would trade in their job for a better environment to work in from a psychological well-being point of view, and also that leaders, in terms of the direct report of someone, has as much impact on a person's psychological well-being as their partner. So I don't think, and I certainly never did in my past as a leader, realize the impact that we have. And it's a huge impact on engagement. So we need to see as leaders, our role, key part of our role is how do we engage our people? And one of that is about getting to know, you know, what we go into the book about. Let's think of people as people. So they're not just payroll. You know, and if we connect to them as individuals, they will feel more connected to the organization. They will give more of themselves, which we will benefit from. So that's a key aspect of this. The organizations that we see thriving are the ones that tap into that potential. If we don't engage our people, we're actually losing massive opportunities to make further improvements, to harness their ideas, to get them engaged in helping us to make a greater place and a better place to work. So it's essential that we recognize that it's something we can actually do something about. Low engagement levels are bad for the individual, they're bad for the organization. They cost us a lot of money and they make it an unpleasant place to work. Why do we can't just accept that. We have to do something to break out of that cycle. And it starts with the leaders recognizing one of my number one jobs is to increase engagement.
Yeah, look, and you know, just on the back of that as well, our people, the people in the organization are probably the only asset that organization has that has the infinite capacity to appreciate in value. So, and you mentioned 23%, Brad. I mean, you know, there's 77% opportunity there for leaders to grow and develop, and that's why we wrote this book, right? There's 77% of people out there that don't really know how to be a good leader effectively and how to really drive a continuous improvement culture throughout their organization. So yeah, I see that as the opportunity, not necessarily the negative part.
Yeah, wow. It is a big opportunity when you think about it. All those more hearts and minds improving the organization is crazy. Now, Chris, in the book, you write about a key leadership approach or a leadership attitude as a leader who serves. Do you mind explaining for the listeners what is a leader who serves?
Sure. So, any leader, any leadership team cannot do everything on their own, despite the best efforts often to try. It's just, they're usually a very small proportion of the number of the people in the organization. So if we think about it that way, who has the biggest impact on the experience that the customer will have? And it's our teams. It's the majority of the people in the business. And so what leaders who serves means is, as a leader, I've got to think about, how do I serve my people so that they can better serve the customer? Right? It's not about being a servile leader. It doesn't mean that at all. It's about, actually, my job is to, how do I help my people to do the best possible job I need them to do? And I'm going to serve from that point of view.
That's neat. So it's a real sort of growth. How do we help them grow? How do I help them, become the best they can become?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Dargs, on it, I know, keen to get your views on leader who serves too, but also too, mate, I know in the book you write about a leader to do this has to be adaptive, an adaptive leader. Do you mind explaining what adaptive leader is about when it comes to serving others' growth?
Yeah, look. I'll answer the first part of the question first around leaders who serve. I mean, we've looked at many organizations that have gone on a continuous improvement, journey. And when you start to see an organization that has a high level of maturity, it's almost like the structure chart inverts, and the leaders are at the bottom. And what I mean by that, it's a symbolic viewpoint, but what we mean by that is leaders are spending more time on the systems of development and developing their people and the mindset and behaviors rather than the systems of work and firefighting. And we see it today. We see lots of leaders firefighting. We see lots of leaders spinning plates, and they're not spending enough time out in the field helping their people improve the lives of themselves, but also improve for their customers. So leaders who serve is pretty important. It's one that supports their front line, the development, and seeing every individual for their true potential. But in order to do that, the leaders have to be adaptive to what's going on in the environment of that particular individual. So when we were brainstorming this book and coming together, we landed on the 5 hats as an analogy of the different type of components and mindsets of behaviors that the leader would have to adapt into, depending on the different types of context surrounding that individual. Typical command and control architecture of an organization where leaders would not be leaders who serve. They'd be the old style leaders would be, they would just, direct, and they would be managing rather than leading. Whereas in this book, we talk about the different scenarios and the different contexts where a leader will have to adapt it based on the different types of situations that surround an individual. Because, under the guise of Edward Deming and his teachings, in his systems thinking, 95% of the defects in any organization are because of an ineffective system, not because of the people. So never blame people, blame process. So when you look at it like that, is how do you get leaders to think that way, and how do you get leaders to adapt? So we came up with the 5 hats, and if I look at the number one, which for me is probably the most important, one of the most important, is the inspire hat. A leader's role is to connect their people on the front line to the overall organizational true purpose. And not just to do that, we've seen it before where, leaders go and they do a big communications out to the front line, and we've got this new purpose, and row in behind it, we give you new cookies and we give you little paraphernalia. That does not drive them or connect them to the purpose. Leaders need to be continually making sure that they're, recognizing, rewarding, making sure that they're inspiring their people, and making them connect to what they do each day, how that impacts the overall strategic direction of the organization. So the Inspire hat is really important. I like to, use the term, it's, the fundamental role of any leader is to connect with their people, to enable them to discover improvement opportunities so they can deliver sustainable, ideal results. So, if we can get leaders to think about connecting with their people and enabling them first, the continuous improvement, dimensions, or the continuous improvement, cornerstone of any, house like that, it will happen organically. But it'll only happen when you start to connect as a leader with your people and enable them to be the best that they can be in the organization. So the Inspire hat was probably one of the most important for me. And that's kind of the start of the discussions around what different types of hats and scenarios we brought into it. So I'll hand over to Chris. Chris might talk about another couple of hats.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, I think you're right. The Inspire one's a great one. I mean, we talk a lot. We do talk in the book about how do we deploy strategy, and the Inspire hat's a key part of how we do that. I'll pick up the coaching hat, because coaching is something that we hear a lot about, and kind of increasingly when people talk about continuous improvement, they say, leaders need to be coaches. But I think there's so much confusion about what we mean by being a coach. And not everyone will agree with this, but we've tried to take a clear position in the book that's and is supported by several other experts in this field, which says actually there is a huge difference between coaching and mentoring. It's not that one's good and one's bad, but we do need to understand there is a difference. And what we've seen from our experiences working in all different organizations is many leaders say they're coaching when in reality they're mentoring. And the difference at a very simple level, the difference is when we're mentoring, we're essentially giving advice and giving our expert view. When we're coaching, we're really asking questions. So a good coach will only ask questions, because what we do in that, when we coach that way, inquiry-based coaching, we're developing people's ability to think for themselves. And that's key in creating this culture, because it cannot be totally dependent on leaders all the time. And if what we do if we only mentor, we build dependency. We give advice. We like giving advice. People get used to having advice. They come and ask us all the time how to fix their problems for them. Before we know it, we're never going home because we're doing everyone else's job as well as our own. So what we need to switch is and it's hard to break that habit, which is the other reason we'll talk about this, and we talk about in the book how to change the habits. And the hats need to become habits, because asking questions when I actually think I know the answer is extremely difficult. But what it does is grows people, and it grows their ability to break out the dependency and to be more creative and to start fixing stuff for themselves. And it has a big impact on engagement levels, because they own the solutions and they want to do more of them. So we have a lot of focus on inquiry coaching, and a lot of it's based on the work of Edgar Schein in terms of humble inquiry, and because I think that is a key lesson for leaders to understand is I need to coach more than I mentor.
Yeah, it's great. So guys, I can hear so far that it's about being a leader who serves. To do that, it's about being an adaptive leader, because every person and the context surrounding them is different. And you mentioned, Dargs, the Inspire hat, which is about connecting people to purpose and inspiring people to motivate and lead them forward and connect them to strategy. Then Chris, you've spoken about the power of the coaching hat that you need to wear to be able to get people to think and own and develop and grow by asking great questions. Dargs, what's a third hat here of these five that you've discovered as key to great leaders?
One for me, Brad, is, and one that I've seen a huge lift in performance with colleagues is around our frontline people, is the support hat. And Chris puts on Edgar Schein there. He has a wonderful quote, when it is my favorite quote of all time. It's basically leaders. The fundamental role of a leader is to create and manage culture. If you do not manage culture, it will manage you, and you may not understand to what extent that is happening. And as I said before, people come to work each day generally to do a good job. And sometimes, often though, there's lots of challenges going on in the world of that individual. So whether that be internal or external, and we talk about that in a bit of detail in the book when I speak about my high performance formula that we created. So yeah, the support part, as a leader, if you can truly understand your individuals, and I call them as individuals, each person has individual nuances. They've all got, challenges going on in their own working lives, but, also in their own personal lives, whether that be in the formula, we call it intrinsic or extrinsic interference. So do you have intrinsic interference going on? And what I mean by intrinsic interference, that could be like, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-belief in their own core belief system. They could be struggling for mental health issues, well-being, and so forth. And extrinsic could be things like, domestic violence, financial abuse, or workplace bullying going on. So as a leader, we don't necessarily go and support these individuals through those challenges that they're facing. So we talk about it a lot in the book around how do we actually get leaders to dance with that interference, and how do we put that support mechanism in place to enable that colleague come to work each day, feel supported, and feel psychologically safe to speak up, and be their true selves. And when you do create that environment of trust and psychological safety, you tend to get a higher level of engagement and performance for those colleagues. So it's a different look from a leader. It's not to say that they're going to be counselors, what have you, but certainly at least understanding what is going on in that individual's sphere of influence, internally or externally, and then putting that support mechanisms in place to help that individual. You definitely see a lift in performance.
But I think another element of that support is recognition. So it's a kind of that's two with the support for when stuff is not as good as it could be, or there's issues around it, but actually recognition for when stuff's done well is also a big driver of engagement. And it's I've come to the conclusion we cannot do too much recognition. It's
probably one of the recognition reward, less about the reward, more about the recognition. And there's a good case study in the book around that, on how it drove a massive customer experience uplift in one of the organizations, just by simple leadership standard work of recognizing individuals each day for connecting to their purpose and delivering on the vision. It's probably one of these systems, Chris, that wraps around every core system, and without it, you just do not drive a high level engagement or sustainable results without it.
I can see too, I guess, what you're saying there, Dargs, and Chris, is that recognition, the connection to purpose, the connection to culture, it allows you to tie everything back, doesn't it? Chris, what's the fourth hat of the five of the adaptive leader, this person that is really good at looking at the person and the context surrounding them and choosing the ideal behavior?
Yeah, well, I think these are not in any order, I think we should point out. And one of the key things about why we picked adaptive leader is actually got to be able. Someone asked me a question recently, well, which sequence do the hats in? I said, well, they're not. It's like, what's the context of the situation? And you decide which hats need it. And when you get more skilled at it, you might actually need to use 2 or 3 hats in the same discussion. And so don't think about them as I've got to do this one and that one. One of the other ones that we've not spoken about is the teach hat. And I remember many years ago being blown away by visiting an organization which were really high performing organization, and having the privilege to sit in on the continuous improvement induction session for new starters. And it was being taught by one of the senior executives. And I thought, wow. And what a message that is sending. I've seen that one of the executive leaders is teaching the continuous improvement course to the new starters. So, and that for me was a big aha. I think actually, leaders are teachers. we've got to teach as well, and so we're not clearly not just teaching continuous improvement, but actually think about how are we embedding knowledge in our teams? How are we also making sure that the learning development systems are delivering what they need to do, and what is my role as a teacher to build people's skills and to develop their thinking. So that we concluded that was a critical hat.
You can see, I guess, Chris, myself, I see it a lot when teaching's outsourced and you don't really get that mastery or that buy-in or that ownership. It's so critical, isn't it? Dargs, the final hat, to the fifth that you discovered from the greatest leaders that serve and can adapt and truly help people grow. What is that fifth hat and when's that used?
Yeah, Brad, that again comes back to that quote by Edgar Schein. It's you need to create and manage culture, right? So we designed the direct hat. The direct hat is quite important for any leader. It is critical for a leader. The standards you walk past is the standards you accept. So at some stages you do need to actually, particularly around safety, right? If you see something that you're one of your frontline teams that has the potential to be injured, well, it's because of inappropriate behaviours or lack of safety control, well then the direct hat needs to be weaved in. And equally as well, if you don't have a team, if you have a team of high performers and there's a couple of poor performers there, poor behaviours as well. If you're not using your direct hat and start to manage those poor behaviours, you will start to disengage the rest of your workforce. So the direct hat is quite important in certain scenarios, in particularly safety and poor behaviours. So it's a skill that not all leaders have, but it's one that is critical in the repertoire of any good leader to be able to call out those poor behaviours, equally from their peers, and poor behaviours from their line managers and above, and senior executives. We need to create that culture of being safe to speak up and challenge the status quo. If things aren't right, if it's not right from a risk perspective, it's not right from a safety perspective, or the poor behaviours, or it's not aligned with the values of the organisation, well then you need to pull in that hat and you need to be directing.
Yeah, and it's like you said, Dargs, I guess it is something that can either be, like Chris, you mentioned, it could be overused by some leaders in some cases, but like you said, Dargs, nowadays even, it could be not used at all and actually lead to terrible culture. So I really appreciate it. I think, guys, we're coming to the end of this episode, but we'll come back on for more. Just in conclusion, wouldn't mind just passing back to yourself, Chris, if you don't mind just summing it up, like what I'm hearing is this, leaders who serve, being an adaptive leader through to the 5 hats, and then we'll close out for this episode.
So what we hope people will get from the book is a simple handbook with lots and lots of case examples to bring them to life at how to create higher levels of engagement, and how to create an organization, and how to help people to flourish so that the organization can also flourish. So we want a better place to work and a more successful organization for everybody.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Dargs, for this show, mate. Really appreciate what you guys have provided to us and the knowledge. Thanks for helping us create a better future. We'll come back in the next show, part 2, where we're going to explore with Chris and Dargs the concept of a core belief system. How does a leader stay in this place of thought and understand their emotions and their others' drivers? We're going to look at the high performance formula that Dargs mentioned, which really brings a lot of the context element together. We're going to look at the part leading from the front plays with look, listen, learn walks, and growing people and really building capability. So again, Chris and Dargs, thank you so much. And listeners, come back to the second episode and you'll hear more. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brad.
What a great episode. It's so good to be able to chat to my good friends, Chris Butterworth and Stephen Dargan, on this book we put so much effort into, and we really know will revolutionise organisations' approach to transformation and truly creating that better future. Remember, you can go to the website leadingexcellencebook.com to be able to get hold of extra case studies, resources, see where events are on, and also to get links to purchase a book. The key takeaway for me for this episode was really the importance of leadership and the approach to leadership to truly creating a culture of continuous improvement innovation. The first piece is, of course, around leaders who serve the growth of others. And that key word is growth of others, and truly choosing our behaviour in a way that truly serves them. The key to that is, of course, the core belief system and understanding ourselves as leaders, and then being able to show up in a way to pause, reflect on the person, the context, and then choose the ideal behaviour, one of the 5 hats, to actually truly help them grow. You get that growing organisation and that growing culture and growing capability, you get a continuously improving organisation. What a great episode. Thanks again, guys. See you in the next one.